The black cloud that erupted from Delilah's Mercedes looked like a smoke bomb went off. Charcoal powder exploded everywhere, coating her designer white jacket, turning her blonde hair gray, covering her $80,000 SUV's leather interior in black dust that would never come out.
You crazy psycho! You tried to kill me!
There stood my HOA president, looking like she'd been dunked in coal, screaming while neighbors filmed everything. Black handprints smeared her truck doors, powder footprints tracked across her pristine driveway. For months, she'd been stealing from my firewood pile, the same pile she'd threatened to fine me for. Every dawn raid, more fuel disappeared, so I stopped stacking regular logs. I filled hollow ones with ultrafine charcoal powder instead. By the time I was done, she'd be the most famous HOA Karen on the internet. Tell me where you're watching from and drop your revenge fantasy below, because this powder-coated thief is about to get everything she deserves. 3 months earlier, none of this powder-coated chaos existed. My name is Marcus Mack Caldwell, 52, medically retired Army engineer after an IED rearranged my left leg in Afghanistan. Purple Heart recipient living on $2,400 monthly disability in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado, where my neighbors spend more on weekly lawn service than I get to survive on. Mountain winters don't negotiate with your bank account. When temperatures hit -20 degrees and your ancient furnace finally gives up, you either find alternative heat or become a human popsicle. That's why I spent my last $400 on premium seasoned oak from a local supplier. 2 full cords of beautiful split logs that smelled like Christmas morning and felt solid as granite under my work-scarred palms. The scent of fresh pine sap and wood smoke filled my cramped workshop as I stacked each piece with the same military precision I'd once used for ammunition storage. The sound of wood chunks settling into perfect rows echoed through crisp mountain air, while the rough texture of oak bark reminded me why I loved working with my hands, until neighborhood royalty decided my property was community property. Meet Delilah Thornfield, 48 years old, HOA board president for 6 consecutive years, successful real estate agent driving an $80,000 Mercedes SUV that purred like a satisfied predator. She lived in Pine Ridge's largest house, prime corner lot, double-wide driveway, professionally landscaped yard, the kind of setup that screams, "I own this entire neighborhood." And in many legal ways, she actually did. Pine Ridge Estates housed 47 homes total, mostly retirees on fixed incomes and working families struggling with Colorado's rising costs. Everyone paid $350 annually in HOA fees for community maintenance and improvements, money that somehow funded Delilah's personal kingdom where she'd perfected the fine art of passive-aggressive discrimination wrapped in property value protection. Her documented victim list read like a small-town war crimes tribunal. Forced elderly Mrs. Lucy to remove traditional garden gnomes, architecturally inconsistent with community standards. Made the hardworking Rodriguez family repaint vibrant blue shutters, unauthorized color variation. Systematically charged young families with children $50 processing fees just for submitting routine maintenance requests. She'd cite homeowners for grass measuring 1/4 inch over regulation height, then charge additional administrative costs to process your compliance payment. The first theft occurred during my mandatory monthly VA appointment. I returned home 3 hours later to find a full third of my carefully stacked wood pile missing, fresh tire tracks pressed deep into muddy ground where luxury wheels had spun for traction. My borrowed security camera had suffered a mysterious technical malfunction that morning. Funny how technology fails at the most convenient times. That same evening, I knocked on Delilah's front door. The overwhelming smell of her expensive French perfume mixed with natural mountain pine needles made my combat-trained stomach turn. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," she declared, standing confidently in her marble-floored doorway wearing a cashmere sweater worth more than my entire monthly grocery budget. "And quite frankly, your accusatory tone sounds rather threatening and aggressive." Behind her 3-car garage, I could clearly spot identical oak splits stacked in suspiciously familiar neat rows. Those particular logs look remarkably familiar to me. They were professionally delivered this morning by my regular supplier. I can certainly provide detailed receipts if necessary. Mind sharing which supplier you used? I absolutely don't need to justify my legitimate purchases to you or anyone else. Just curious, since my entire pile mysteriously disappeared while I was receiving medical treatment. Are you directly accusing me of criminal theft? Because that definitely sounds like targeted harassment to me. That's precisely when I realized Delilah represented that special type of person who'd steal your homemade lunch from the office refrigerator, then enthusiastically help you search for it while casually finishing your sandwich. The crackling sound of my remaining firewood that night promised something different. Not just physical warmth, but the beginning of Delilah Thornfield's long overdue education. Turns out, HOA presidents aren't as legally bulletproof as they think. I spent the next morning diving into Pine Ridge Estate's governing documents, all 47 pages of bylaws that Delilah wielded like a medieval sword. My engineering brain loves technical manuals, and HOA covenants are just poorly written technical manuals with legal consequences. From my Army days, I remembered how supply sergeants got busted for creative accounting. Always check the paperwork trail. So I submitted a formal request for all board meeting minutes from the past 2 years. I'd read somewhere that Colorado law requires HOAs to provide these within 10 business days of any written request. No bullshit fees allowed. Delilah's response arrived Thursday, reeking of her expensive perfume even through the envelope. Meeting minutes available by appointment only, subject to $25 administrative processing fee. Red flag number 1, legal HOA requirements don't include made-up fees. The documents I finally received made my blood pressure spike. 2 years of board meetings showed Delilah approving her own emergency landscape maintenance expenses, $200 monthly payments to Thornfield Property Solutions. 3 guesses who owned that company. But the real goldmine was comparing original documents to Delilah's current interpretations. The 1987 covenant clearly allowed homeowners to store reasonable quantities of heating fuel with 0 restrictions. Delilah's 2019 version suddenly limited wood storage to decorative amounts not exceeding community aesthetic standards. She'd literally rewritten our legal contract to criminalize my heating fuel. Time for some reconnaissance. I borrowed my neighbor Bob's trail camera, the kind hunters use for tracking deer, and positioned it in my workshop window. The bitter smell of winter pine mixed with anticipation as I angled it perfectly toward the remaining woodpile. 3 days later, jackpot. The camera captured Delilah's teenage son loading my oak splits at dawn while she supervised from her idling Mercedes, exhaust vapor clouding around her like evidence of guilt. The kid worked fast, grabbing the best pieces first, while Mommy Dearest kept watch like a professional thief. I knocked on her door that afternoon, video evidence burning in my phone. "I have footage of you stealing my firewood." Her coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. "That wood violated Section 4.7.2, creating fire hazards. I was protecting the community." Section 4.7.2 doesn't exist. I've read our entire covenant. The silence stretched like a piano wire about to snap. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic flickering behind her eyes. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm saying you fabricated rules to justify theft. Your hostile tone is being documented for harassment charges." But Delilah's real counterattack came through the neighborhood whisper network. Suddenly I was the dangerous veteran with PTSD who'd threatened violence over firewood. She painted herself as the brave community leader protecting families from unstable military extremists. The taste of injustice mixed with mountain air as her lies spread faster than wildfire. My engineering training kicked in. Every problem has a systematic solution. Colorado requires HOAs to provide financial records for homeowner inspection within 10 days. No fees or appointments required. I'd learned this during my divorce when my ex-wife tried hiding assets through fake business expenses. I filed the request along with a formal complaint to the state regulatory board. $25 from my grocery money, but watching Delilah's face when official state letterhead arrived made every skipped meal worthwhile. Her desperation showed when she called an emergency meeting to discuss problematic residents without the required 72-hour notice. Basic HOA law violation. Boards can't ambush homeowners with surprise votes. I crashed that meeting armed with documents and righteous fury. "Looking for Section 4.7.2, I announced, holding up the original covenant. "Anyone want to help me find Delilah's imaginary firewood rule?" Pages rustled as neighbors actually read their contracts for the first time. The sound of discovery filled the room. Half of Delilah's violations violated absolutely nothing except her control addiction. But karma delivered the perfect punctuation mark to our escalating war. While stealing my remaining wood, Delilah's son dropped a heavy oak split directly onto her Mercedes hood. The metallic clang echoed through the morning air like a bell tolling for justice. The dent was dinner plate sized, right where her premium paint job used to shine. My hidden camera caught everything: the impact, the damage, the kid's panicked look around before pretending nothing happened. Perfect evidence of theft, property damage, and cover-up attempts. The winter wind carried possibilities as I uploaded everything to secure cloud storage. Delilah had escalated from simple theft to fraud, extortion, and evidence tampering. She had no clue what kind of systematic problem-solving she'd unleashed from someone trained to turn everyday materials into very effective solutions. The dented hood would remind her daily that stealing has consequences. Turns out, I wasn't Delilah's only victim, just her latest mistake in a long criminal career. The morning after the Mercedes dent incident, I decided to conduct some neighborhood reconnaissance. In Afghanistan, we called it winning hearts and minds. In Pine Ridge Estates, it was more like finding fellow prisoners of HOA war crimes. Mrs. Rodriguez answered her door with flour-dusted hands, the heavenly scent of fresh tamales drifting from her kitchen like edible therapy. "That bruja charged us $500 for fixing our rotting porch," she whispered, glancing around like Delilah might materialize from thin air. "Called it an architectural review fee." Our porch was literally collapsing. My grandson almost fell through the boards. Bob Henley was elbow-deep in truck engine maintenance, motor oil scenting the crisp air with honest working man smell. Decorated Vietnam vet owned exactly 2 vehicles, his work truck and his late wife's sedan that he couldn't bear to sell. "Delilah cited me for excessive vehicle storage," he growled, wiping greasy hands. "2 cars violate community standards, but her family's got 4 vehicles, including her kid's BMW. The pattern emerged like enemy troop movements. Young couple with a baby, threatened with liens over their toddler's non-regulation swing set. Elderly widow forced to destroy her husband's memorial garden for attracting wildlife. Every bogus violation came with invented fees that funded Delilah's lifestyle. That evening, I hosted an informal war council in my garage. 12 neighbors showed up carrying coffee, documentation, and years of buried rage. The concrete felt cold underfoot, but our collective fury warmed the space fast. "She's systematically robbed this community," announced Patricia Mills, retired teacher with spreadsheets that would make accountants weep. $8,000 in unauthorized fees from our block alone. Then Patricia dropped the bombshell that changed our entire war strategy. Her daughter worked as a paralegal downtown with access to state corporate databases. During my divorce, I'd learned about nonprofit filing requirements. HOAs must submit annual reports to maintain legal authority. "Sarah checked our HOA's paperwork," Patricia said quietly. "Delilah hasn't filed required state documents in 3 years. Legally, she has 0 authority to collect anything." The garage fell silent except for pine branches scraping against wind. Every violation, every fee, every threat, completely unenforceable. Delilah had been running an elaborate extortion racket disguised as community management. But here's where we got strategic. Instead of nuking her immediately, we decided to let her dig deeper graves first. The next theft happened during my scheduled VA appointment. My upgraded security system, courtesy of Bob's electronics expertise, captured Delilah in glorious 4K detail. But here's the mini twist that made my engineer brain explode with possibilities. She wasn't just stealing my firewood, she was selling it on Facebook Marketplace for $300 per load, using my premium oak to fund her criminal enterprise. The woman had turned theft into a profitable business model. The sound of my stolen logs hitting customers' trucks made my blood pressure spike. This wasn't petty theft anymore. It was organized crime with a Mercedes getaway vehicle. Delilah's panic showed when she called yet another emergency meeting to vote me out for creating community discord. She packed the room with cronies, other board members, neighbors who owed her real estate favors, anyone willing to rubber stamp her vendetta. But our intelligence network had grown. Patricia mobilized the teaching community. Bob brought his veteran buddies. Mrs. Rodriguez organized the Hispanic families Delilah had systematically targeted. When meeting night arrived, the community center looked like a revolution planning session. The smell of nervous sweat mixed with industrial carpet cleaner, as Delilah read prepared accusations about my dangerous military background and threats against elected officials. Her voice cracked slightly. She knew something had shifted. Patricia stood with evidence folders thick enough to stop bullets. "Before voting on removing anyone," she announced in that teacher voice that commanded instant attention, "let's discuss why our HOA president is operating a black market firewood business using stolen inventory. The screenshots were devastating. Delilah's Facebook posts selling premium seasoned oak, timestamps matching my security footage, customer reviews praising quality, my quality, stolen from my yard, sold for her profit. The evidence painted systematic fraud that made Bernie Madoff look like an amateur shoplifter. Neighbors started connecting dots faster than internet conspiracy theorists. Bogus fees, invented violations, missing maintenance funds. Suddenly, Delilah's luxury lifestyle made perfect criminal sense. Her face cycled through confusion, rage, and terror as years of carefully constructed authority collapsed in real time. She tried threatening foreclosure for unpaid assessments, but her voice wavered like a broken radio signal. The room had turned completely. Neighbors were sharing documentation, comparing violation notices, realizing they'd been systematically robbed by someone they'd elected to protect them. Delilah stormed out screaming about lawsuits and police reports, but her threats sounded desperate now, like a cornered animal making noise before the trap springs shut. We had evidence, community solidarity, and nuclear legal options waiting in reserve. The revolution had begun, and Delilah didn't even know she was already defeated. Delilah's next move proved that desperate thieves make spectacularly stupid decisions. 3 days after our community uprising, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door, holding paperwork that reeked of legal desperation and expensive perfume residue. Delilah had filed a restraining order, claiming I'd threatened physical violence during aggressive confrontations about property disputes. The woman caught stealing my firewood on 4K video was asking for legal protection from her victim. You can't make this stuff up. Court day arrived cold and gray, mountain air sharp enough to slice through bullshit. I couldn't afford lawyers on disability income, so I represented myself against Delilah's slick attorney who probably charged more per hour than I earned per month. "Your Honor," her lawyer announced like he was auditioning for Law and Order, "my client fears for her safety from this unstable veteran suffering documented PTSD-related anger issues." Judge Martinez, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd heard every sob story imaginable, stared over her glasses with visible skepticism. "Ma'am, do you have evidence of actual threats?" Delilah's testimony collapsed faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. She described our confrontations like armed combat zones, but couldn't produce one witness, recording, or specific threat. Meanwhile, I calmly presented security footage showing systematic theft, property damage, and her son's criminal participation. "Your Honor, Colorado requires imminent threat of bodily harm for restraining orders. Asking someone to stop stealing your heating fuel doesn't qualify as violence." Gavel down, case dismissed, 10 minutes total. The sound echoed through the courthouse like karma's doorbell. But public humiliation triggered Delilah's complete psychological meltdown. She called city code enforcement, reporting my illegal commercial lumber operation. Poor Inspector Mike showed up expecting to find some massive sawmill violating zoning laws. Instead, he found a disabled veteran with a modest woodpile and a very pissed-off HOA president screaming into her phone. "Ma'am," Mike told Delilah while examining my setup, "splitting firewood for personal heating is completely legal residential activity. I'm not citing people for staying warm." The smell of honest sawdust mixed with Mike's barely contained laughter as he documented the complaint's frivolous nature. "Hell, my grandfather split more wood than this just for weekend campfires." While Delilah's legal attacks imploded, our investigation revealed the shocking scope of her financial crimes. Patricia's daughter had been digging deeper. Delilah owed $15,000 in unpaid contractor bills, had systematically drained HOA reserves, and faced foreclosure on her own mortgage within 90 days. The woman stealing firewood from a disabled veteran was completely broke. That's when my engineering brain started calculating elegant revenge solutions. I ordered $200 worth of hollow decorative logs from a specialty woodworking supplier. Designed for gas fireplace aesthetics, perfect oak bark exterior, hiding completely hollow interiors. Bob's barbecue business carried industrial-grade charcoal powder, ultra-fine stuff used for blacksmithing that felt like black velvet and created impressive clouds when disturbed. But here's the mini twist that shifted everything into overdrive. Delilah wasn't just stealing my wood anymore. She'd started an insurance fraud scheme, submitting photos of my woodpile to claim fire hazard reductions on her homeowner's policy. The investigator who called me sounded very interested in prosecuting someone making false danger claims for premium discounts. My neighborhood surveillance network had mapped Delilah's theft patterns with military precision. Always during VA appointments, always premium pieces first, always from the back where street visibility was minimal. Perfect intelligence for tactical planning. Evenings in my workshop became meditation sessions. The satisfying whir of power drills creating precisely engineered hollow logs, classical music mixing with the scent of fresh sawdust and anticipation. Each log got a spring-loaded plug activated by lifting pressure, simple physics that would create maximum visual education without permanent harm. The technical challenge reminded me of controlled demolitions overseas, except this time the only casualties would be dignity and expensive car interiors. Then Delilah crossed the ultimate line. She started spreading anti-veteran propaganda, claiming PTSD made military families inherently dangerous to peaceful communities. She suggested my disability benefits attracted unstable individuals who threatened property values and neighborhood safety. That declaration of war awakened every veteran within 50 miles. Bob organized his military network, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and 1 Medal of Honor recipient who'd lost both legs to an IED but could still outwork any civilian half his age. They started appearing at community events, politely but firmly correcting Delilah's ignorant stereotypes. The taste of brotherhood was stronger than Patricia's famous coffee as neighbors rallied around military families she'd targeted with her bigoted campaign. My hololog arsenal was complete. GPS trackers installed, community surveillance network activated, powder charges calibrated for maximum dramatic impact. The trap was set with Swiss chronometer precision. All we needed was for Delilah to be herself, a compulsive thief who couldn't resist stealing from someone she'd convinced herself was too weak to retaliate. The mountains held their breath that night, snow clouds gathering like an audience waiting for the main event. The phone call that shattered Delilah's world came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Mac, get over here now. Sarah found something that's going to destroy her." Patricia Mills' voice crackled with the kind of excitement that comes from discovering your enemy has been digging their own grave for years. I hobbled across the frost-covered street, boots crunching on ice that felt less cold than the justice brewing in my chest. Patricia's kitchen looked like a war room. Sarah sat surrounded by printouts, laptop screens glowing with legal documents, and the concentrated fury of someone who'd just uncovered institutional corruption that made Bernie Madoff look like an amateur shoplifter. "Mom asked me to dig deeper into Delilah's corporate filings," Sarah said, adjusting wire-rimmed glasses with trembling hands. "What I found isn't just fraud, it's complete legal annihilation." The document spread across Patricia's kitchen table told a story that made my combat engineer brain explode with tactical possibilities. The smell of Sarah's stress-brewed coffee mixed with the sweet scent of incoming justice as she explained Colorado Revised Statute 7128207, HOAs, must file annual reports with the Secretary of State to maintain corporate authority. Miss 3 consecutive years, your organization legally ceases to exist. Delilah hadn't filed since 2020. Every violation notice, every fine, every fee she's collected for 3 years is theft by deception, Sarah announced, her voice rising with prosecutorial excitement. She's been running a criminal enterprise disguised as community management. The implications hit like successive artillery strikes. Every neighbor she'd extorted, every bogus assessment, every threatening letter, legally worthless paper. But here's the beautiful part. Delilah was personally liable for every unauthorized dollar she'd stolen. "There's more," Sarah continued, pulling up insurance records with the intensity of a detective solving cold cases. "She filed multiple claims about your woodpile creating fire hazards, requesting premium discounts for eliminating neighborhood dangers, false safety claims for financial benefit, textbook insurance fraud." Patricia leaned forward, teacher instincts recognizing the perfect educational moment. "Sarah contacted the State Insurance Fraud Division yesterday. They're opening criminal investigations." My coffee tasted like liquid victory as Delilah's complete legal destruction crystallized. Real estate licenses require clean criminal backgrounds. Fraud convictions mean automatic career termination. Her entire professional life hung by threads she'd systematically cut herself. But here's what made me smile with predatory satisfaction. I was sitting on this nuclear arsenal while she continued stealing my firewood, completely oblivious to the legal tsunami approaching. Insurance investigators had opened active files. State corporate authorities were reviewing dissolution procedures. The Attorney General's office was examining systematic HOA fraud patterns. Multiple agencies were circling like sharks while Delilah remained blood in the water, clueless. "When do we annihilate her?" Patricia asked, clearly ready for immediate warfare. Not yet, I said, tactical patience overriding emotional satisfaction. Let her steal the hollow logs first. Public humiliation, then legal obliteration, maximum psychological impact. Sarah nodded with prosecutorial approval. Perfect strategy. Her crimes are already documented and reported. Investigations proceed regardless. But catching her red-handed with powder evidence creates irrefutable theft proof for criminal court. The next HOA meeting was Thursday. Ideal timing for community-wide revelation of her powerlessness. Every neighbor she'd robbed deserved front-row seats for Delilah's complete destruction. We maintained operational security like planning military strikes. No hints, no warnings, no premature celebration. Let Delilah continue believing she controlled this community while legal walls closed around her from multiple directions. My hollow logs waited in the woodpile like loaded artillery shells, GPS trackers active, surveillance network positioned for maximum documentation. The morning sun felt warmer knowing Delilah's reign was ending whether she realized it or not. Criminal prosecution, career destruction, and public humiliation were converging like a perfectly coordinated attack. Justice was coming from all directions. I just had to wait for her greed to detonate the final explosion. Engineering problems require engineering solutions, and Delilah Thornfield had just become my most satisfying technical challenge since defusing roadside bombs. My workshop smelled like Christmas morning mixed with sweet revenge as I arranged 12 hollow logs on my workbench. Each one cost $15 from a decorative fireplace supplier, beautiful oak shells designed to hide gas lines, now repurposed for the most educational theft prevention system ever devised. The physics were poetry in motion. Charcoal powder weighs almost nothing but creates maximum visual chaos when dispersed. During my Army days, I'd studied smoke grenade mechanics for combat applications. This version would teach identical lessons about consequences, except nobody gets permanently hurt, just permanently embarrassed. Bob's barbecue business carried industrial-grade charcoal powder used for blacksmithing. $8 per pound, feels like black velvet between your fingers, creates billowing clouds that would make Hollywood special effects teams jealous. My calculations required 90% ultrafine particles for maximum coverage. 10% coarse stuff for lasting impact. You absolutely sure this won't seriously hurt anyone? Bob asked, measuring precise quantities in his garage, while the metallic scent of welding equipment mixed with charcoal dust like some mad scientist's laboratory. Completely harmless, I grinned, remembering survival training where we'd eaten activated charcoal to prevent poisoning. Food-grade stuff, same thing health stores sell for detox smoothies. Worst case, she needs industrial car detailing and therapy. The trigger mechanism required real engineering artistry, though. I'd spent weeks researching Colorado booby trap statutes. Turns out my paralegal friend Sarah knew more about property protection laws than most lawyers. Devices are perfectly legal if they can't cause physical injury and only activate during criminal acts. My spring-loaded plugs met both criteria like they were designed by legal scholars. The trigger system borrowed from model rocket ejection charges, completely legal to purchase, impossible to trace, available at any hobby shop. Small charges activated by lifting pressure, designed to pop cork-style plugs and release educational powder clouds. Think champagne bottles, but with life lessons instead of celebration. Each log got precisely drilled pressure release holes, carefully sealed with removable wooden plugs that would detonate under theft conditions. The satisfying whir of my power drill mixing with Bach's Brandenburg concertos felt like composing symphony movements dedicated to justice. GPS tracking elevated this from simple revenge to evidence-gathering masterpiece. Tile mate trackers cost $30 each on Amazon, provided 200-foot Bluetooth range perfect for documenting theft patterns. When Delilah moved my logs, her own phone would automatically record locations, timestamps, and criminal behavior. This is some PhD-level revenge engineering, Patricia marveled, watching me insert tracking devices into hollow cavities. You've transformed property protection into performance art. Community coordination required battlefield-level precision timing. Patricia would photograph from her bedroom window, perfect elevation for capturing Mercedes versus powder interactions. Bob positioned across the street with professional video backup equipment. Mrs. Rodriguez agreed to call 911 if chaos escalated beyond property crime entertainment. Weather forecasts showed ideal Colorado conditions: dry air, light northwest breezes that would carry black clouds directly toward Delilah's spotless driveway, like guided missiles targeting her dignity. I'd analyzed her theft patterns with the obsessive detail I'd once applied to enemy patrol routes. Always during VA appointments, always premium pieces first, always working from piles back edge where street visibility was minimal. My hollow logs were positioned exactly where her greedy fingers would naturally gravitate. Timing had to be surgical precision. Deploy hollow logs the evening before my scheduled medical appointment, mixed strategically with 6 legitimate pieces to ensure multiple lucky selections. Insurance would reimburse my actual wood costs, but watching Delilah learn consequences was absolutely priceless. Sarah had prepared legal documentation covering every angle. Police reports would include theft video, GPS data, witness statements, and property damage evidence, building an ironclad prosecution case while she literally covered herself in proof of criminal behavior. The psychological beauty, Sarah explained while reviewing our bulletproof legal position, is she commits filmed theft, gets dramatically powder-bombed, and provides final evidence for fraud charges already pending against her. Media coordination came through Patricia's teacher union network. Local investigative reporter Jessica Martinez had spent years covering HOA abuse stories, was frustrated by lack of compelling visual evidence. Our powder explosion would provide Emmy-worthy footage for evening news segments. The psychological warfare aspect was equally crucial. Delilah had spent months constructing an image of untouchable community authority. Public humiliation would demolish that carefully built facade while legal consequences eliminated her actual power permanently. My final preparations included contingency plans for every possible scenario. If powder somehow failed, nuclear legal options waited for Thursday's community meeting. If she delayed stealing, neighborhood surveillance would document her next criminal attempt. If she miraculously avoided all consequences, insurance fraud investigators were already building airtight criminal cases. The hollow logs nestled in my woodpile like armed artillery shells, GPS trackers activated, powder charges primed for educational detonation. Weather conditions optimal, surveillance network positioned, legal documentation locked and loaded. All systems were absolutely go for Professor Delilah's masterclass in consequences. Tomorrow would teach her exactly what happens when you steal from someone with nothing left to lose. The universe loves setting up perfect storms, and Delilah was about to get caught in a Category 5 hurricane of consequences. While I fine-tuned my hollow log masterpiece, she reached peak arrogance levels that would make medieval queens jealous. The day before my strategically planned VA appointment, she scored her biggest power flex yet, a 4-2 board vote increasing annual dues by $100 per household. Community infrastructure demands adequate investment, she proclaimed at the emergency meeting I wasn't invited to attend. Patricia's phone recording captured Delilah's authoritative tone mixing with nervous neighbor murmurs as she wielded power like a corporate dictator announcing mandatory overtime. The vote revealed her iron grip. Delilah plus 3 spineless cronies versus Bob Henley and Patricia Mills, the only neighbors with functioning backbones. Democracy in action, if democracy meant whatever the thief wants. That evening, I deployed my educational arsenal with the ceremonial precision of loading cannons before naval battle. Mountain air felt sharp against my cheeks as I positioned each hollow log exactly where Delilah's greedy fingers would naturally gravitate. The smell of pine needles mixed with anticipation while GPS trackers activated and our surveillance network armed for documentation duty. My phone buzzed constantly with neighborhood intelligence that would make the CIA proud. Patricia reported Delilah conducting reconnaissance drives, 3 separate passes, slowing to study my woodpile like a general surveying enemy fortifications. "She's definitely casing the target," Bob texted from his workshop, the sound of power tools providing perfect cover for our communications. "Mercedes has been idling in her driveway for 30 minutes. Woman's literally warming up her getaway car." Wednesday brought the false alarm that almost gave everyone heart attacks. Delilah's cleaning lady arrived at 9 a.m., loading her trunk with supplies while our entire surveillance network exploded into high alert. Patricia's emergency group text lit up phones across Pine Ridge Estates. "Contact, is this happening? All units respond." Turns out, Maria was just stocking up on toilet paper and Pine Sol, but the adrenaline surge revealed how emotionally invested our whole community had become in Delilah's upcoming education. Mrs. Rodriguez positioned herself at her kitchen window with coffee, homemade churros, and binoculars like she was settling in for the World Series of HOA justice. Thursday morning, I performed my departure with Broadway-level theatricality. Started my truck loudly enough to wake hibernating bears, waved goodbye to Patricia like I was leaving for extended vacation, even called out, "Back in 3 hours, gotta love VA efficiency," for anyone eavesdropping. The scent of diesel exhaust mixed with mountain air and pure anticipation as I drove toward the medical center, knowing Delilah was probably timing my departure from behind her expensive window treatments. Then the waiting game began and our neighborhood transformed into a military command center. Patricia's intelligence updates came like battlefield reports. 9:45, Mercedes backing out of garage conducting perimeter reconnaissance. Then 10:15, target vehicle parked across street, subject observing from driver position. By 10:30, our group chat resembled tactical communications from a Navy SEAL operation. Engine running 47 minutes and counting, Bob reported with professional precision. Either she's planning major theft operation or that Mercedes needs serious mechanical attention. The tension was electrifying everyone except me. I was getting routine blood work, completely zen about inevitable outcomes. Combat operations taught me patience. Some missions require letting chaos unfold naturally rather than forcing artificial timelines. Then came the mini twist that exponentially multiplied our entertainment potential. "Reinforcements arriving?" Patricia texted with barely contained excitement. Son plus unidentified male accomplice just arrived in separate vehicle. 3 criminals, 2 getaway cars, looks like Ocean's 11, HOA edition. Absolutely perfect. Multiple witnesses, additional hands touching hollow logs, expanded potential for educational powder distribution across several targets. My engineer brain calculated dramatically increased impact scenarios involving teenage social media documentation. At 11 a.m., while I discussed medication adjustments with a VA nurse, Delilah finally launched her crime spree. "Contact confirmed, Mercedes approaching target woodpile." Patricia's message arrived like emergency military dispatch. Subject examining logs with intensity of professional wine taster. The next 25 minutes unfolded through real-time surveillance reports that read like sports commentary mixed with criminal investigation drama. Delilah selected logs with deliberate care, completely oblivious she was handling custom-engineered consequences designed specifically for her educational benefit. First hollow log triggered, minor powder discharge visible, Bob reported with scientific precision. Subject appears confused, but attributes to natural wood debris. Second log produced major cloud formation, definitely suspicious now, but greed overriding caution, Patricia added through obvious grin typing. Teenage accomplice dropped third log when powder explosion hit, attempting damage control on mother's designer jacket. Mrs. Rodriguez contributed with obvious entertainment value. Our group chat exploded with real-time footage requests, amateur tactical analysis, and collective celebration as half our neighborhood watched Delilah systematically cover herself in criminal evidence while committing theft on multiple cameras. By 11:25, she'd triggered 8 separate powder charges, loaded 12 logs total, and turned her Mercedes interior into a charcoal disaster zone. "She's screaming about terrorist attacks while loading more stolen property," Patricia reported breathlessly. "Time to come home and enjoy the beautiful chaos." The drive home felt like returning from combat to find your enemy had walked straight into every trap you'd ever imagined. My phone buzzed non-stop with updates that read like play-by-play coverage of the most entertaining crime scene in Colorado history. By the time I turned onto Pine Ridge Drive, our neighborhood surveillance network had documented Delilah's complete transformation from HOA president to walking disaster zone. Log number 8 contained the double powder charge, Patricia reported breathlessly as I parked. Created black cloud visible from 3 blocks away. Looks like she detonated a charcoal bomb. There stood Delilah Thornfield in her driveway, looking like she'd been dunked in a coal mine explosion. Black powder coated every inch of her designer white jacket, turned her perfectly styled blonde hair gray as storm clouds, and covered her $80,000 Mercedes interior in a layer of dust that would never completely disappear. "You maniac! What the hell kind of terrorist attack is this?" she screamed while my neighbors emerged from houses like audiences leaving intermission. The irony was delicious. A woman caught stealing red-handed was claiming to be the victim of assault. Her son stood beside the Mercedes looking like he'd survived a volcanic eruption, frantically trying to brush powder off his mother's jacket while making everything worse. Ma'am, what exactly seems to be the problem here? I asked with the innocent concern of someone returning from medical appointments to find unexpected neighborhood excitement. You booby-trapped your property to assault innocent community members. I glanced at my scattered logs, then at her truck loaded with my stolen firewood. Innocent community members don't usually load other people's heating fuel into their personal vehicles. Bob Henley materialized beside me like backup cavalry, his phone recording everything for posterity. Delilah, that's Mac's firewood in your Mercedes. Want to explain how it traveled from his yard to your truck? Her powder-covered face cycled through confusion, rage, and panic as she realized the entire neighborhood was witnessing her criminal meltdown. Black handprints smeared across her truck doors like evidence markers. Powder footprints tracked across her pristine driveway, creating a trail any detective could follow. I was removing fire hazards from community property. Patricia Mills appeared with the timing of a courtroom prosecutor. Community property? According to our HOA covenant, individual lots are private property. You were on Mac's land without permission, taking his personal property without consent. That's called theft. Mrs. Rodriguez called 911 while Delilah continued her powder-coated tantrum. The sound of sirens in the distance mixed with neighborhood chatter as more residents gathered to witness the most entertaining HOA meeting that never officially happened. Officer Martinez arrived to find a scene that probably violated several training manual scenarios. A well-dressed woman covered head to toe in black dust, standing next to a luxury vehicle loaded with firewood, screaming about terrorist attacks while surrounded by helpful neighbors offering conflicting explanations. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened here? He asked Delilah with the professional patience of someone who'd handled domestic disputes and noise complaints but probably never powder-covered theft accusations. He set explosive booby traps to murder community volunteers. Officer Martinez examined my logs, then studied Delilah's Mercedes interior. Ma'am, is this your firewood? I was protecting the community from fire hazards created by unstable military personnel. So you took firewood from his property to protect the community? The beautiful pause that followed contained 3 months of perfect justice crystallizing in real time. Delilah's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water as she realized she'd just confessed to theft in front of a police officer. The HOA has authority. I handed Officer Martinez my phone showing GPS tracking data. These logs were moved from my property to hers at approximately 11 a.m. I have video footage of the theft in progress, plus witnesses. Bob pulled up his footage showing Delilah and her accomplices loading my property while I was at medical appointments. Mrs. Rodriguez provided additional angles from her kitchen window. Patricia offered photos documenting the entire operation from start to powder-covered finish. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said gently, taking someone else's property without permission constitutes theft under Colorado law. The fact that you got covered in... What is this stuff? Food-grade activated charcoal, I explained helpfully. Completely harmless, used in health supplements. I've been experimenting with natural wood preservation methods. Right. The fact that you got covered in harmless powder while committing theft doesn't make the theft legal or the powder illegal. Delilah's final desperate play involved claiming military discrimination. This man is a dangerous PTSD veteran who built weapons to attack innocent civilians. 3 other veterans in our neighborhood, Bob, Mrs. Lucy's son, and the Martinez family father, stepped forward in silent solidarity. Officer Martinez, himself an Iraq veteran according to his uniform patches, looked personally offended by her stereotyping. Ma'am, protecting your property from theft isn't illegal. Using non-harmful deterrents isn't criminal. Stealing firewood from disabled veterans definitely violates several statutes. The smell of charcoal dust mixed with mountain air and absolute justice as Delilah realized her carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. Her powder-covered Mercedes, GPS-tracked stolen logs, and dozen witnesses had created an evidentiary nightmare that no lawyer could spin into victimhood. The revolution was complete, and everyone knew exactly who had won. The emergency HOA meeting Delilah called for Monday night became the most attended community event in Pine Ridge Estates history. 43 of 47 homeowners packed the community center, along with local news crew from Channel 7, 3 off-duty police officers providing security, and enough smartphones to document every second of what everyone knew would be Delilah's public execution. The smell of nervous energy mixed with industrial carpet cleaner and the lingering scent of Delilah's expensive perfume, though she'd traded her usual designer attire for a conservative business suit that couldn't quite hide the charcoal stains under her fingernails. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice shaking slightly as camera lights blazed, "we're here to address terrorist attacks against elected community leadership by unstable individuals who threaten our neighborhood safety." The auditorium buzzed with murmurs as neighbors exchanged glances. Everyone had seen the viral videos. Delilah covered in black powder, screaming about booby traps while standing next to a truck full of stolen firewood. Local news had picked up the story under the headline, "HOA President Caught in Explosive Theft Scandal." I sat in the back row with a thick manila folder, watching Delilah dig her grave deeper with every word. Matt Caldwell deliberately set explosive devices designed to harm innocent community volunteers performing essential maintenance duties, she continued, gesturing dramatically toward me. "This represents clear and present danger requiring immediate removal from our peaceful community." That's when I stood up, folder in hand, and walked toward the front of the room. The sound of my boots on linoleum echoed through sudden silence as every phone camera tracked my movement. "Before we discuss property protection," I announced clearly, "let's talk about property theft." I opened the folder and pulled out GPS tracking data, printed in large font visible to news cameras. These logs were tracked moving from my yard to Delilah's truck at 11:17 a.m. last Thursday. Video evidence shows her loading my firewood while I was at medical appointments. Delilah's face flushed red as mountain sun set. "Those logs violated community standards." "According to which standards?" I interrupted, pulling out the original 1987 HOA covenant. "Our actual legal documents allow unlimited heating fuel storage. There is no Section 4.7.2 restricting firewood. You invented rules to justify theft." Patricia Mills stood with her own documentation. "Speaking of invented rules, let's discuss why our HOA hasn't filed required state paperwork in 3 years. The nuclear option had arrived. Patricia's daughter, Sarah, attending as legal counsel, addressed the packed room with prosecutorial authority. Colorado Revised Statute 7128207 requires annual corporate filings to maintain HOA authority. Delilah hasn't filed since 2020. Legally, this organization has no power to collect fees, issue violations, or conduct official business. The community center erupted in shocked voices as neighbors realized the implications. Every fine paid, every bogus fee collected, every violation notice issued, completely illegal for 3 years. Furthermore, Sarah continued over the chaos, collecting money under false corporate authority constitutes theft by deception, a Class 4 felony in Colorado. Delilah tried regaining control. These are frivolous technicalities designed to distract from Mac's violent assault on community leadership. Violent assault? I pulled out photos of food-grade charcoal powder packaging. This is the same activated charcoal sold at Whole Foods for detox smoothies. The only thing assaulted was your dignity. Bob Henley stood with his own evidence. Let's talk about the firewood business you've been running using Mac's stolen inventory. Facebook Marketplace screenshots show you selling his premium oak for $300 per load. The room fell silent as neighbors processed systematic fraud spanning years. Mrs. Rodriguez added her testimony about bogus architectural fees. The young couple described swing set violation threats. Elderly Mr. Peterson revealed being charged processing fees for basic maintenance requests. A pattern of systematic extortion emerged that made Delilah look less like community leader and more like organized crime boss. Jessica Martinez from Channel 7 stepped forward with microphone. Mrs. Thornfield, how do you respond to evidence showing you've collected thousands of dollars in unauthorized fees while operating an illegally dissolved corporation? Delilah's lawyer, who'd been frantically texting throughout the presentation, whispered urgently in her ear before standing. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination and will make no further statements. The most beautiful silence in HOA history followed that admission of guilt. I delivered the final blow with veteran-earned authority. Delilah, you picked the wrong disabled veteran to steal from. Americans died for the right to be free from petty tyrants. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to clean up corruption. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes while Delilah gathered her papers with trembling hands. She tried storming out dramatically but tripped on the community center steps, nearly face-planting in front of rolling news cameras. The vote to remove her from all HOA positions passed 41-0 with 2 abstentions. Even her cronies abandoned ship. Justice served, consequences delivered, community liberated from 3 years of systematic theft disguised as governance. The revolution was complete, and everyone knew exactly who'd won. 6 months later, Pine Ridge Estates had transformed into the neighborhood we'd always deserved. The legal aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Delilah pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and theft by deception, paying $8,400 in restitution to neighbors she'd systematically robbed, plus $5,000 in state fines. Her real estate license got suspended for 2 years. Turns out, criminal fraud violations don't look good on professional licensing reviews. The Colorado Real Estate Commission's investigation revealed she'd been skimming HOA funds to cover personal mortgage payments, using community money as her private bank account while neighbors struggled with invented fees and bogus violations. My insurance company not only covered stolen firewood replacement, but upgraded my entire home security system after reviewing footage of Delilah's criminal enterprise. The GPS tracking evidence I'd gathered became a case study for property theft prosecution. Apparently, my hollow log strategy impressed law enforcement enough to recommend it for other rural property protection situations. Our new HOA board, elected unanimously in emergency session, immediately reduced annual dues by 40% and focused on actual community improvements instead of funding presidential power trips. Bob Henley became treasurer, Patricia Mills took secretary duties, and Mrs. Rodriguez stepped up as community liaison. People who actually cared about neighbors instead of controlling them. The Firewood incident sparked an annual tradition nobody saw coming. Every October, we organize neighborhood wood-splitting parties where families bulk purchase seasoned logs and spend weekends preparing for winter together. The sound of splitting malls mixing with laughter and conversation has replaced Delilah's violation notices as Pine Ridge's signature autumn activity. Mrs. Rodriguez's cultural garden exploded into full celebration mode, funded by money recovered from Delilah's illegal fee collections. Her vibrant flowers and traditional decorations became community gathering spaces where kids play and neighbors actually talk to each other. The HOA board officially designated it our Diversity Heritage Garden and allocated budget for expansion. Bob Henley converted his garage into a community workshop where neighbors share tools, teach skills, and tackle home improvement projects together. His veteran network expanded into monthly gatherings, supporting military families throughout the county, providing practical help with everything from yard work to VA paperwork navigation. The educational impact spread beyond our neighborhood borders. My story went viral across HOA horror story social media groups, teaching property owners about corporate filing requirements, GPS tracking for theft evidence, and legal limits of community association authority. Colorado legislators even referenced our case while drafting stronger HOA oversight regulations. From a financial perspective, our community saves approximately $47,000 annually through reduced fees and shared resource purchasing. Bulk firewood costs dropped 60% through group buying. Shared equipment eliminated individual tool purchases. Group maintenance projects replaced overpriced contractor fees that mysteriously benefited Delilah's business network. The veteran support group I started meets monthly in the community center, helping disabled military families navigate bureaucracy, home modifications, and neighbor relations. We've assisted 12 families with everything from wheelchair ramps to heating system repairs, proving that communities work better when people help instead of harass each other. Delilah's comeuppance reached poetic justice levels. Forced to sell her oversized house to pay legal fees and restitution, she moved to a rental apartment across town. Her Mercedes got repossessed when insurance fraud conviction triggered loan acceleration clauses. Her son transferred schools to escape viral video fame, and her real estate career essentially ended with criminal record notifications. The HoloLog video reached 2.3 million views across multiple platforms, spawning copycat revenge stories nationwide. Apparently, creative property protection resonates with Americans tired of petty authority abuse, whether from HOAs, landlords, or bureaucratic bullies. Our Community Scholarship Fund, established using recovered illegal fees, awards $2,000 annually to local high school students pursuing engineering, legal studies, or public service careers. This year's winner wrote her essay about standing up to institutional corruption through systematic documentation and community organizing. As I stack this winter's firewood, purchased legally, stored properly, and shared generously with neighbors who need extra heating fuel, the smell of pine and mountain air carries satisfaction that money can't buy. Sometimes justice requires patience, creativity, and just enough engineering knowledge to turn everyday materials into very effective educational tools. The mountains are quiet tonight, but our neighborhood is alive with the sound of genuine community. Laughter from the Rodriguez garden, power tools from Bob's workshop, kids playing where Delilah once prowled for violations.
You know what haunts me most about this story? It's not the charcoal powder explosion, nor Delilah's meltdown. It's how long this went on before someone said enough. 3 months of systematic theft, years of illegal fee collection, an entire community of 47 families slowly bled dry by a woman with a Mercedes and a power complex. It only took a disabled veteran on a fixed income to finally connect the dots and fight back. Mac didn't win because he was some tactical genius. He won because he refused to normalize abuse. While everyone was silently paying bogus fees to Delilah, tiptoeing around her manufacturer authority, Mac asked the simplest question: who gave you the permission to steal from me? That's it. That's the whole story. We live in a country where people will spend 20 minutes arguing with the McDonald's cashier over pickle placement, but suddenly become all docile sheep when someone with a title start picking their pockets. Mac broke that spell, not with hollow logs, but with the radical idea that theft is theft, no matter who's doing it. Here's my question for you. How long would it take for you to finally say enough? Share your breaking point story below. Hit subscribe if you think ordinary people can break the system. And remember, the only thing scarier than standing up to a bully is realizing how long you have been down on your knees.